things we had touched on earlier was how, it's if or, right? So, like if you don't agree with something I say, suddenly it becomes where I don't like you or you don't like me or we're not friends anymore simply because we've disagreed on something might be fundamental, right? But I think we have to challenge ourselves to not think like that, because then we can't have wholesome, deep, and very well-rounded conversations. So we can't be like the switch on or off.
Right.
So if you are, for instance, support a different party from me, even though I might have supported the same party as you before, I've changed, I've evolved. There isn't such a thing, I don't think, as being left behind, or you're just disagreeing with me personally. We have to understand that just because someone is a man or woman does not mean they can't support the other sex.
Exactly.
Or they can't support other iterations of sexuality and identity, right? Because
other viewpoints.
But I
yes. think I'm in total agreement with you. But I think we as a people, our culture has been created.
Right.
It's not that we came here and we met a culture from 50 years ago or 200 years ago. We have created this culture of either you're with me or you're against me. Either you see it my way or you're stupid.
Right.
And we have to now change that culture here in the Bahamas, to the extent that we now are receptive and we're now talking, like we said earlier, and listening to understand each other's viewpoints. And we may not agree, but it doesn't mean we must be enemies because we don't agree. We have to learn to understand where each other's coming from. Like I said to you earlier, I don't have to do exactly what you say, but I should be able to sit down with you, have a sensible conversation, without getting angry and walking away from that conversation thinking you're no longer my friend.
Right.
I should be able to sit there and listen and say, oh, that's how you see it. I've never seen it that way, Patrina.
Yeah,
Interesting.
good point.
This is my,
Right.
Good point. This is how I see it. I now understand how you see it. Okay, no problem. Let's move on to another conversation. Let's go and have dinner. Let's go for drinks.
Right.
But it can be where, because of our culture for the last few decades, the last 2 decades or so, where we've become a selfish people. That if you're not doing what I say and seeing it the way I see it, I don't want nothing to do with you.
Right. It has to do not just with like our IQ. I think as society has grown, maybe in the last 50 years, IQ has become such an overweening level of criteria, right, that we put on everyone. So what's your IQ? I need to talk to people who are as smart or smarter than I am. But what is that a measure of, right? Because there's IQ, which is book smart, and then there's EQ, which is emotional intelligence, and what we also call mother's wit here, and street smarts, right?
Yes.
So I have 3 boys, and the first 2 are extremely academically smart. My eldest one is also very emotionally intelligent, and part of it is because I think when I raised him, we talked earlier, I was very much in my false self. I was raised to be a very certain way when I was young, and I thought that in order to be successful, I had to duplicate that in my son. But our children are actually, sovereign beings,
Exactly.
souls and minds and bodies of their own. And our job as parents, I realize now, and even Bernard says to me sometimes he has reactions to how differently I parent his younger brothers. But when I noticed and I realized and had to admit to myself how rough I was on him, and I apologized to him, he told me, and he says, Moni, it's okay, right? I know you love me, and I don't think I'm that damaged, which really comforted me a lot. And he says, but don't do that to the boys. Right? So I followed what he said, and he says sometimes when he comes home to visit and he'll look at them and he's like, how do you guys get away with that? And then I have to remind him that he actually set me on that path to listening and watching and trying to think of how my children are understanding the world versus saying, don't do this, do it this way,
And like I shared with you earlier with Rianne, my 4-year-old, I have only learned in the last 4 to 5 years prior to her being born that, my child or my children are individuals. They're not my property. They're individuals. And I'm not raising a child, I'm raising an adult. I'm not raising a child, I'm raising an adult. And I have to allow this child to find herself. and I'm there to be her support system. I'm not there to tell my child at 4 years old or 10 years old, you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, and
Right.
that's it. And if you don't do it, I'm not satisfied or I won't be happy.
Right.
I have to.
And you're shaming me.
Right.
You
You're an
know?
embarrassment to me if you don't do these things in life. So, I've been trying to encourage persons who have kids that I know to allow your child to be themselves and to find themselves and to be that support base and support system for them, encouraging them in the things they like, that they delight in, and in the career path they want to be, and the person they want to be, rather than you as the parent trying to dictate what your child should be because you wanted to do it and you didn't do it, or because you think your family and friends will be impressed
Right.
if your child is a certain way.
Right. But that entails the parent, like you said, you were whole and you found yourself 4 to 5 years before you had children.
Yeah.
Many of us, and it has something to do with age, but not always. We are, like I said, not even ourselves, right? When we come to the point in our life when we're raising children. So how is it that if we don't love ourselves completely, that we can imbue this child with such unconditional love that they're gonna be comfortable enough to explore and find, what colors they like, where they like to draw on, who they like to be around,
Right.
So it's very important for all of us to work on ourselves, right? Since I started learning and interacting with the family groups that Dr. David Allen formed, I have found that there are themes in our society here that are overwhelmingly common. And they're actually things that were really shocking to me. And so from a position of privilege, I found that mental health-wise, I am not as damaged as a lot of people. There are huge amounts of abuse, child abuse, sexual abuse, mental and physical abuse. And the dangerous thing in our society is that these things are accepted, like shouting at your children, shouting at each other, manipulating each other, like you said, there's this culture of always someone having to win.
True.
So it's either like, if we're interacting, there's very rarely a sense of camaraderie where like we come together and we're equal and we leave equal. I mean, we're enlightened by each other and we're exchanging on an equal basis. Sometimes in order to fill that void of your false self after you've been abused, something's been taken away from you, you try to fill it with violence, with overpowering, taking back your power through the same violence that your power is taken away
and
from
we
you.
always say in this culture, hurt people hurt people.
Exactly.
And what we're not addressing on a national level is how to help those who've been hurt not to continue to hurt people, and how to help them heal.
Right.
So we have a lot of work to do here in our own country, in our island, our communities, and our families. But another thing with us in Bahamian families, we have this thing where we don't want to be embarrassed in our family for something someone in our family has done to someone in our family. So there's a lot of abuse happening in families in this country, and these children aren't getting the help they need because some adult doesn't want to embarrass another adult in the family for what that adult has done to the child.
Right.
So one of the things I shared,
totally well said.
one of the things I said to you earlier too with my daughter, our first daughter, is that even though she's 4 years old, her body is her body. She's an individual. I will never tell her she has to hug somebody or kiss somebody. So when persons see us and say, "Hi, Rian, can I get a hug?" She looks at me, and if she don't want to hug the person, you don't have to hug that person. But we as a people, we've been forcing our children to show affection, to show love for somebody who doesn't deserve affection or love from your child.
Right.
Children have to feel comfortable with somebody. And if you raise your child, forcing your child to show affection, that child's going to become some young adult, some young woman who's dating or married.
Doesn't have the proper boundaries and no, it's the thing about that too is that then there's pressure on the parents to define manners. Adults have the responsibility not to ask either. So
That's
like
true.
for me, I've had to learn that, right? And because like I told you earlier, I was made to engage when I was young, when I was very shy. I was made to engage people, and it's hard because then later on, thank goodness I didn't have abnormal boundaries, but I realize too that now I can interact with who I choose to.
All right, great. So we're here at the Our Carmichael studio and at Our Carmichael Community Center.
Yes.
And you can reach us at 603-2326, ourcarmichael@gmail, and we're at number 40 Carmichael Road. We're right in between Popeye's Chicken and the Carmichael Primary in a 2-story building, and blue and white building. You can't miss us. If you want to get involved, if there's any way we can assist and get you some help, every Monday, Patrina's facilitated Dr. Allen.
As a group here,
every
and
Monday.
it's confidential. If you don't want to be part of a group setting, it's kind of, it's interesting, something you have to get used to, but it's very powerful. You can also call the family at 698-0155 and get help there. Remember, no one's ever in it alone. You can feel that you're alone sometimes, and sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger, so call and engage, because you shouldn't do anything that you're uncomfortable with alone.
Right. So definitely please spread the word, share the videos, share the posts, tag somebody that you may need some help. If you need some help, please reach out to us, but share the video. Help more persons find out about getting help.